What if someone had been sleeping under your roof for weeks, hidden just feet away from where you ate, where you laughed, where you laid your head at night, and you had absolutely no idea? Not a ghost, not something supernatural, a real breathing human being, watching you, listening to you, living off you, while you went about your life completely unaware. That thought alone should be enough to make you check every room in your house tonight. These are real accounts. Real people who lived through moments that rewired the way they see their own homes forever. And I promise you, by the time we reach the end of the last story, you will never walk past a quiet room the same way again. You are watching The Id's Shadow. If this is your first time here, welcome. And please hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel goes to the dark corners that most people are too afraid to shine a light on. Before we dive in, drop a comment and tell me where in the world you are watching from tonight. I want to know. Now, let's get into it. Story 1. The Man Under the Couch. Growing up, my family was fortunate enough to live in a large house. And like most large houses, ours had rooms that nobody ever really used. Tucked toward the back of the first floor, just past the main hallway, was a side room that my siblings and I had casually started calling the second living room. It wasn't much of anything, honestly. An old recliner in the corner, a small side table, and a mid-sized couch pushed flat against the far wall. That was it. No television, no reason to linger. Most days we walked right past the doorway without so much as glancing inside. It was just there. A room that existed without purpose. Looking back now, I wish we had paid closer attention to it. It was an ordinary weekday morning when I woke up feeling sick. Nothing catastrophic. A raw throat, a pounding head, that bone-deep fatigue that hits you before you've even tried to stand. I told my mom, and she told me to stay home and rest. My siblings gathered their things and headed off to school. My parents left for work. And just like that, the house was entirely mine. For the first few hours, I did exactly what any sick teenager would do. I stayed in bed half asleep, half scrolling my phone, drifting in and out of a mild fever haze. I wasn't worried about anything. The house was quiet. The house was safe. The house was mine. By around 10:30 in the morning, something changed. Footsteps. Slow, steady, deliberate, moving across the first floor below me. My immediate thought was my mom. She sometimes went into work late, and it wouldn't have been strange for her to still be around. I was hungry anyway, so I dragged myself out of bed, shuffled down the stairs in my socks, and made my way toward the kitchen. I made it roughly 3 feet from the kitchen doorway, and then I stopped. Standing inside my kitchen was not my mother, it was a man, tall, easily over 6 feet. His clothes were ragged and torn at the edges, dirty in a way that told a story of days, maybe weeks, without washing. He was standing completely still, and he was looking directly at me. I could not move. I could not breathe. I could not form a single word. The two of us just stood there, frozen in a silence that felt like it stretched across entire hours, though it was probably no more than a handful of seconds. He didn't lunge, he didn't speak, he didn't smile or frown or show any expression at all. He just watched me, still as a photograph, like he was curious about what I would do next. Then something deep inside me finally fired back to life. I turned and I ran. I hit those stairs at a speed I didn't know I was capable of. I heard nothing chasing me. No thundering footsteps, no shouting, no pursuit of any kind. But I was not about to slow down and verify that. I slammed my bedroom door shut, through the lock, dragged my dresser across the floor with both hands and wedged it hard against the door. Then and only then did I reach for my phone. And here is where I'll confess I was not thinking clearly. Because instead of calling the police, I called my mom. I was screaming. I could barely put words together into sentences. She told me to breathe, to stay in my room no matter what happened, and to call 911 immediately. So I did. 15 agonizing minutes later, I watched from my bedroom window as a patrol car rolled up to the front of the house. Officers went inside. I waited motionless until I saw the signal that it was safe to come down. I told them everything: the man, the kitchen, the torn clothes, that blank, expressionless stare. They searched the entire house, every room, every closet, every corner from the ground floor to the attic. They found nothing. No broken window, no forced door, no sign of entry, no sign of any person at all. Nothing. My parents arrived home shortly after, furious and frightened. The officers were beginning to wrap up and head out, when one of them, almost on his way through the door, stopped. He had noticed something. A Walmart bag, peeking out from underneath the couch. That couch? The one in the side room at the back of the first floor, the one no one ever used. They pulled it out. Then they pulled out another, and another. Dozens of bags, hundreds when all was said and done. Trash bags packed with rotting food, weeks' worth of decomposing waste, layered and compressed beneath that couch like a hidden landfill. Buried among the garbage were items that belonged to our family: wipes, water bottles, small personal belongings that had been quietly taken from around the house over time. And at the very back, worst of all, a sealed bag filled with urine. That man had been living under our couch for weeks. He had eaten beneath us, slept beneath us. He had listened to our conversations and our arguments and our laughter. He had breathed the same air in the same rooms while we watched television just a few feet away and felt completely, entirely safe. And somehow, not one of us had smelled a thing. Not one of us had heard a single sound from beneath that couch. To this day, I cannot find an explanation for that. We stripped that room bare after it was over. Every piece of furniture removed, every surface cleared, the whole space gutted and rebuilt as a breakfast nook. Open wooden chairs, no frames, no skirts, no space underneath anything large enough for a person to disappear into. Never again. I left for college a few months later, and stepping out of that house for the last time felt something like finally being able to exhale after holding your breath for an entire season. But the memory never left. Every time I wake up with a scratchy throat, every time a house goes just a little too quiet, I think about that morning. I think about the man standing in my kitchen. And I wonder, how many mornings had he already been there, watching, before the morning I finally walked down those stairs and saw him? Story 2. Old Cecil. This next story happened well over 10 years ago now. It still sits with me as clearly as if it were last weekend. I was in my later years of high school at the time, living with my family in a well-known East Coast city, a blue-collar neighborhood that was, right around then, just beginning its slow and visible decline. My parents had gone away for the weekend to attend a wedding that required an overnight hotel stay. My brother was pulling the night shift at work. That meant the house was mine from Friday evening straight through to Saturday morning, entirely to myself. For someone who was naturally an introvert, This was nothing short of paradise. I want to be clear. I wasn't a loner in any dark sense of the word. I was a big guy. I had friends. I went on dates. But silence and solitude were things I genuinely treasured, and uninterrupted alone time was rare. My plan for the night was essentially sacred. PlayStation on the big screen television. Late takeout delivered to the front door. Dragon Ball Z reruns until my eyes gave out on me, and then a slow and comfortable drift into sleep on the couch, sometime around 2 a.m. My one companion for the evening was Cecil. Cecil was a beagle. 8 years with our family by that point, and he was about as threatening as a decorative pillow. He didn't howl the way most beagles do. He didn't bark at passing cars or squirrels or shadows. What Cecil did, and did exceptionally well, was eat, sleep, and press his warm and heavy little head into your lap like it was his singular calling in life. He was, by every definition of the phrase, a peaceful old dog. It was around 1 a.m. The pizza box was empty. The television was still glowing. Cecil's head was resting in my lap, and my eyes were just beginning to lose the argument with sleep when I heard it. A bang coming from the back alleyway. I barely reacted. Anyone who has spent real time in a city neighborhood knows the night has its own constant soundtrack. Dumpsters shifting, cats knocking things over, pipes settling, people passing through. One bang in an alleyway is nothing. I closed my eyes again and let myself drift. Then Cecil's head rose off my lap. The hair along his back lifted slowly, strand by strand, until it stood completely upright. His whole body went rigid. He was staring, fixed and unblinking, at the door that led down to the basement. I reached over and stroked his back, told him it was nothing. He settled, though reluctantly, and I tried once more to drift off. Then the second bang came, and Cecil did something I'd never once seen him do in all 8 years of knowing him. He launched off that couch like something had been released inside him. His paws hit the hardwood at a dead sprint. He tore across the room toward the basement door, barking and growling with an intensity that turned my blood cold. This was not a startled dog reacting to a sudden noise. This was something categorically different. His entire posture had been replaced by something I didn't recognize, something coiled and fierce and absolute. He looked, and I need you to understand, I mean this literally, like a trained canine police unit responding to a known threat. Not Cecil, not my lazy, gentle, lap-warming beagle. Something else had taken over entirely, and whatever it was furious and afraid in equal measure. That was when I heard it through the barking. A persistent, rhythmic banging against the old door at the bottom of the basement stairs. That door opened out to our back alleyway. It was ancient, heavy iron, rusted solid at the hinges, difficult to push open even when you had the correct key and knew what you were doing. And someone on the other side of it was working at it methodically, patiently, like they had time. I had grown up in that neighborhood. I understood the distinction immediately. When someone tries a door, finds it locked, and moves on, they wanted your belongings. When someone tries a door, finds it locked, and keeps going anyway, they want something else entirely. I went upstairs and grabbed the wooden baseball bat I kept stored under my bed, specifically for situations like this one. Then I headed toward the basement. I'll be honest with you, that was not a wise decision. I was a teenager, running entirely on adrenaline and an inflated sense of my own toughness. But I can also tell you that I never made it all the way to the bottom of those stairs. Cecil blew past me like a fired round. And from the far side of that door, I heard a man's voice, clear, sharp, startled, say something I won't repeat on this channel. The banging stopped. Complete silence, just like that. I stayed awake on that couch until sunrise, with the bat laid across my knees. I never called the police. Foolish, in hindsight, but I was young and I was angry, and I was convinced I could manage whatever came through that door. My brother arrived home the following morning and I told him everything. He went downstairs to inspect the damage, reached out and grabbed the handle of that basement door, gave it one firm pull, and the entire door came off its frame. One solid push from the outside. That was all the separation there had been between me and whoever was working at that door in the dark. One solid push. And one very old, very small, very unexpected dog, who somehow found something inside himself that he had never shown before in his life. We had to say goodbye to Cecil a few years after that. His body had simply run its course. Before the veterinarian administered the final injection, I asked for a few minutes alone with him. I sat with that old dog, that peaceful, lazy, warm-hearted animal who had never once behaved like a guard dog in his entire existence. And I thanked him, not only for that night, but for all of it. For every quiet evening, every head in the lap, every year of easy and uncomplicated companionship. Because without that night, I told him honestly, I don't believe I would have had the life I have now, the wife, the children, all of it. People hear this story sometimes and say Cecil was simply doing what dogs are built to do. Maybe that's true, but I knew that dog for 8 years. And what Cecil did that night, the speed, the aggression, the absolute certainty, was not what Cecil did. It was something beyond him. Something that seemed to understand the urgency of the moment in a way that I, standing right there, had not yet fully grasped. Story 3. The Voice in the Storm. I was around 13 years old when this happened. I still live in this house. And after all this time, I still do not have an explanation. We live in Tornado Alley. That means when serious storms move in, I do not sleep upstairs. I gather my things, bring my dog, and settle into my dad's room on the ground floor where it feels safer, where the walls feel thicker and the distance to a basement is shorter. That night, a heavy thunderstorm had come rolling in. The kind where rain doesn't fall so much as hammer the house in sheets, where lightning doesn't flicker so much as explode across the sky in white bursts. It was approaching 1 a.m. and I was sitting up in bed, watching YouTube on my phone, waiting for the worst of it to pass. Then I heard my dad's car pull into the driveway. I know that car the way some people know a voice. It had a deep, distinctive bass from the stereo, a particular low rumble that belonged to no other vehicle on our street. There was absolutely no mistaking it. I heard it slow, heard it turn, heard it settle. I assumed he was coming down to sleep, since he had been working all night and the upstairs would have been noisy and uncomfortable in that kind of storm. I started gathering my things to clear the bed for him. I waited. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2 minutes. He never came downstairs. I walked to the window, hit the one position directly facing the driveway, completely unobstructed, a clear line of sight from the glass to the curb. There was no car there. Not his, not anyone's. The driveway sat empty under the rain. I stood there for a long moment, building a reasonable explanation in my head. My dad had mentioned he wouldn't be home until around 2 a.m. I had probably confused the sound with a car passing out on the highway. It was late. I was tired, I walked back to the bed and sat down, and then it occurred to me. The sound of that engine had never moved. It hadn't continued down the road. It hadn't faded the way highway traffic fades. That slow, diminishing pitch, as a vehicle puts distance between itself and you. It had stopped in the precise location where a car entering our driveway would stop. And somehow, even now that I could no longer hear it, it felt present, like a sound that had ended but not departed. Like something still occupying the space where the noise had been. I did not look back at the window. More minutes passed. The storm bore down harder, rain hitting the exterior walls, like gravel being thrown by the fistful, thunder deep and close enough to feel in the chest. And then, from somewhere in the direction of the garage, I heard my father cough. His cough, specifically his, the one I had heard my entire life. For exactly 1 second, relief moved through me like a wave. And then the wave broke. The garage door had never opened. In our house, in a storm like that one, the garage door is something you hear and feel all at once. That mechanical groan traveling through the walls, that shudder in the floor. There had been none of that. No door, no entry from the garage into the house, no footsteps crossing the kitchen, nothing. And then, softly, so softly that my first instinct was to dismiss it as something my tired mind had assembled from the ambient noise of the storm, I heard my name, spoken in my father's voice, coming from somewhere inside the house. I did not move. I did not get up. I did not respond. I turned my head slowly and looked at my dog, who was looking back at me with that particular tilted head expression animals get when they sense that something is wrong with you but cannot locate the source of the problem themselves. He had heard nothing. Whatever had made that sound, it had made it only for me. Something in that house knew my name. Something in that house had my father's voice. And something in that house, in the dark, in the middle of that storm, was calling for me to come upstairs. I laid myself back down. I pulled the covers up around me. I turned on every light within arm's reach, and I did not close my eyes with any intention of keeping them closed. I lay there rigid and listening until 4 a.m. when I jolted awake, crossed immediately to the window, and saw my father's actual car sitting in the driveway exactly where it was supposed to be. I went upstairs and told him every single detail. He listened to all of it without interrupting. When I finished, he didn't dismiss what I'd said. He didn't offer a logical correction or tell me I'd been dreaming. He simply had no answer. Neither do I. What I know is this. Something that night had learned enough about my home, about my father, about me, to know exactly what sound would bring me out of that room and up those stairs. It knew the car. It knew the cough. It knew my name and how to say it. And whatever it was, whatever waited at the top of those stairs in the dark, I am grateful beyond words that I pulled that blanket up and kept those lights burning and stayed exactly where I was until morning came. That is all for tonight on the Id's Shadow. If these stories unsettled you, good. That means you were listening closely enough. Drop a comment right now and tell me exactly where in the world you are watching from tonight. I genuinely want to know how far this channel reaches. And if someone you love has ever been afraid of an empty house, a strange sound, or a room that feels just slightly wrong, share this with them. As a gift, naturally. Make sure you hit the like button, leave a comment, and above all, that you're subscribed to the Id's Shadow so that the next time something stirs in the dark, you'll be the first to hear about it. Sleep well tonight, if you still can.